Well, good evening and welcome to the LBJ Grasslands outside of Decatur, Texas. Tonight's exercise is a field test of the Sofirn LT1 Mini Lantern. Now, I want to thank Sofirn for providing me with an evaluation unit and making this review possible. You may be wondering, if you've seen any of my other videos, why am I even reviewing a lantern? My primary use case is wilderness search and rescue. This is clearly not a searchlight. I will try to answer that question, but I'll do it throughout the course of the testing tonight. The first thing I want to look at is size. When they say mini, they're not joking. For comparison, this is the SC21 Pro Mini EDC. This is a dedicated blue light, and on the left we have a couple of tactical lights from very well-known manufacturers. So the overall size is about the same as a typical tactical light, and it's incredibly light. That immediately solves two of the big problems that I've historically had with lanterns. As a ground-based asset, my biggest concerns are always bulk and weight. Bulk affects pack size. I don't have a lot of room in my pack. As far as weight, ounces or pounds, pounds are pain. Of course, you may now be thinking, well, this is so small, it can't be useful for anything other than lighting up the interior of my tent. Well, we're going to find out because, again, if you've seen any of my other reviews, you know that I don't do unboxing, I don't talk about tech specs or do measurements. I'm all about field testing. I'm going to take this light out and simulate using it in a search and rescue context and see how it performs under actual field conditions. Now, if you do want the in-depth technical review, there's a very good one that is linked to from the product page, and I will put the URL of the product page in the video description. The final thing I want to say before closing out the intro is that while the lantern does use the Anduril 2 UI, I'm going to test it tonight exactly the way it came out of the box. I've made no modifications to it whatsoever. The UI is extremely simple. One click to turn on. Press and hold to cycle through the modes all the way up to the max of 310 lumens. Press and hold to cycle all the way back down. One click to turn off. So simple, even I can do it. All right then, how does it actually perform? How would I use this in search and rescue? Well, let's wait for the sun to go down and I'll be back to answer those questions. No matter how I get called into a search and rescue activity, at some point I have to stage my gear, and this will often happen at night. So I generally have everything spread out on the truck, then based on SMEAC, situation, mission, execution, admin, communications, I'll decide what gear goes, what gear stays. Then I do a final gear check, get kitted out, and then I head out. This is historically where I use a lantern, and I'll often have a lantern mounted on the top of a tripod. I've got it set up on the top of my iPhone set up right now on top of the Beast Grip Pro, and my first question is whether or not the LT1 Mini would be suitable for this initial staging activity. I've got it barely at 60%, and I have it very comfortably resting on the top of this rig. So yes, absolutely I could use this in staging. It's more than bright enough. It's very convenient. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is, since I want to be able to take this light into the field, I'm going to show you how I would actually pack it in my ruck, and then how I would bring it into play in a situation where I transition from search phase into rescue phase. Okay, you can see this is how I have the lantern set up on the back of my ruck. I just love the convenience of this particular form factor. This is going to be a little challenging to film handheld, so I'm just going to grab my pack here and then move out in this direction. So let's suppose, hypothetically, I've been searching for 2 to 3 hours, and okay, now I finally found the person I'm looking for, and they're laying pretty close to this tree. So no matter where they are, as I'm moving forward, I'm assessing the psychological and physical condition of this person. I'm getting ready to apply first aid. So I'm making that transition from the search phase now into the rescue phase. So I need to set up area lighting around this area, and that's in addition to my headlamp, because as I'm getting closer, I'm actually turning the illumination of my headlamp down. So let's move over to the tree. I've taken my pack off. If I don't have something to rest the pack against, I'm just going to have to set it up as best I can. And so I've got it here. Then let's turn the lantern on. I've got it set up in turbo mode right now, max illumination. So what I'm going to do is turn my headlamp completely off. So that gives you an idea of just the basic illumination I get at the high level, and I don't even have the benefit of height. I have that lantern almost at ground level, but I can set up kind of a situation where I have a cross light, so I have one light moving in this direction, turn my headlamp back on at a very low spot. Let me put it in, okay, that's the lowest possible flood. Now I've got this kind of a cross light situation going, so that gives me very, very smooth, even illumination where my injured person is. But again, headlamp back off, and I'm stepping back and back. I got to be careful because can't see where I'm stepping. Okay, I'm about a good 8-9 yards away from that pack right now, and that's just absolutely great area illumination. Now you notice in the opening I had a carabiner on the lantern. I've taken that off. That's because I have it pre-staged for the next test, which is another area lighting test. Now I don't camp. That is not a tent. That's a survival tarp that has UV protection. I'm simulating a situation where I searched for someone during the day, found them, was in a situation where they were severely dehydrated, they were being cooked by the sun, so I have to set up some sort of an impromptu shelter. Now, for convenience purposes, I use trees. Sometimes I won't have that. I've been in situations where I just have to dig a hole into the ground with my knife, stick my trekking pole into it, and then somehow use that as a support. But in this situation, the person is not able to move, and so we are waiting for other responders to make it into our position, and I have to set up area lighting. Now, in a lot of situations, I will not be able to make a fire. Even though I could theoretically make a fire in this setting, there's a burn ban in effect. So I have to have alternate means of illuminating an area. So I just have the lantern set up. I've got a strap up on part of the tree, and then I'm using the carabiner to hang it from there. I am 12 to 14 yards away from that structure, and I'm going to continue to move out. I've got the lantern set on turbo mode, and you can see from the standpoint of area lighting, that's just absolutely superb. I'm even going to continue walking back and head out towards the road. I hope I don't trip. Then someone's going to have to come rescue me. I mean, at some point I could even say out to maybe 50 yards. That's a good beacon. And I can still see the survival tarp. So I've got to admit, I'm pretty impressed. From what I've seen, this unit may be called mini, but that just refers to the form factor. In terms of the combination of size, weight, and performance, this has already earned it a potential place in my loadout. The only thing I don't know about is durability. I'm really hard on gear. I take gear out in extreme weather circumstances. You know, you saw how I was carrying that lantern. I may be out in the winter in freezing or below freezing conditions for hours at a time. So I need to do some more testing, see how this unit holds up. I may do some sort of a 6-month update, but from my initial testing right now, this blows away every expectation I had for this particular unit. I mean, absolutely job well done. So that's going to wrap it up. Until the next review, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching the video.